We want to welcome everybody to our luncheon for the Jacksonville Broadcasters Association. My name is Richard Gainey. I'm the president of this organization. We have our board members with us. We always like to recognize them for the work they do behind the scenes. Walking away from the bar is our vice president, Matt Ray. At the bar, Mary Jo Trinkler, our treasurer, our secretary. Bev Campbell, next to her, is our treasurer. Howard Kelly over here, dining on something extremely healthy, is a board member and our webmaster. The founder of the organization, Harry Reagan, back here. Mike Miller found his way with all the beautiful ladies. Tommy Riggins, he's the salesman of the day, also helping set up. And Ken Thomas, our educational liaison from the University of North Florida, and we appreciate his work today. Our next luncheon, if you want to put it on your calendar, is August 15th. We're still working on the content of that. Still working on that. Oh, fingers are crossed with Mike Miller. He's producing, we hope, that particular program. We'll let you know more about that later. But August 15th is the date. And of course, we always accept and love to hear from you as what your suggestions are for our programs. Do want to recognize again Ken Thomas for putting together this panel today. The luncheon is the state of the news business, and Ken, along with his students who produced the video for this, once it is done, we post it on our YouTube page as well as our website. So ladies, excellent people, the floor is yours. We were going to get started a little earlier because it's a great panel, with a little room for questions at the end.
Well, thanks again. I want to echo Richard's comments and thank Ken for putting this program together. I mean, it's just so incredible to have all of these accomplished, powerful women with us today. So, really do appreciate it. So, first off, I just want to say congratulations to all of you and to your organizations. I think this is just wonderful for the city to have so many women in these leadership positions. So you can control what's said about you, we're just going to start and let you introduce yourself. So your name, organization, and maybe just how long you've been there to get us started.
Sure, I'm Pascal Head, and I'm with Action News Jax. Been in the market about 20 years.
I'm Megan Harris. I'm with First Coast News. I've been here 3.5 years. Came here from WFA in Dallas.
Mary Kelly Malta, the editor of the Florida Times Union since last year, but born and raised here in Jacksonville.
Good afternoon. What a great crowd. And thank you, Ken, for putting this together. I'm Catherine Bonfield from WJXT.
Hi, I'm Jessica Palumbo, the news director at WJCT Public Radio, and I've been there for 3.5 years.
Terrific. So let me just say, you don't have to answer all the questions. You can wait for one you like, but you might be waiting a long time. You know? And we'll save some time at the end to let our audience answer some questions. So we've all heard like discussion after discussion about, women in the workplace, and we've read articles about it. I'm curious as to what your reaction was when, Ken or whatever member of the board called and invited you to participate, and why it was important to you to take your time, as busy as you are, to be here to participate, which we appreciate very much. Anybody want to go with that?
There was actually a tweet maybe a month or so ago, y'all remember, it was about a month or so ago, where someone had posted about all the women leaders in the news organizations locally, and it's not just us. Karen Mathis over at the Daily Record, I think was one of the others. There were several that were named, and I thought that was really neat. So, I think that we probably would all say something similar, which is we're just doing our jobs, which we probably do pretty similar to people who hold those positions before us in some ways. But I'm always happy to come and talk about what we do and why we do it.
I thought it was just a great opportunity to meet all these fabulous women. some of us were able to get together and have lunch. We did that on Wednesday. And, we're competitors, yes, but I think we all like each other and respect each other. And I just thought it was a great opportunity to get together and do something like this. So again, thank you, Ken.
And I echo what Dave said. I also would like to point out that almost all of the public radio stations in Florida are also run by women. It just so happens. So all except for one have a woman in charge. Yeah.
And also the Jacksonville Business Journal as well. So, I've been around a long time, and don't have to tell you guys that. But I've seen like a lot of progress being made in terms of the number of women that I see in the news business. But as you move up, and that's probably like a lot of organizations, as you move up, it gets a little trickier at the top. You know, it's one thing to get in on the ground floor, but again, just trickier as you try to move up in your career. Just wondering what your experience has been as you have moved up into these like top roles.
Thank you. Cut you off here. For me, I always kind of looked at it as I was just doing my job and wanting to get better and wanting to learn, and I never really thought about it as being a barrier between women and men. It was just sort of, that job looks cool, that job looks fun, I want to do it, how do I get in your seat, your chair looks comfortable, kind of thing. And I just wanted to keep taking it from there. But it is very true. I was recently at an NAB convention in DC, and no offense to anyone in the room, there's a lot of great journalists who have paved the way for us. But I was looking around the room, and it's a bunch of white dudes. Yeah. And so it's great to see that more doors have opened, and that people like us are taking advantage, and not just advantage like we got one up on you, but that we have put ourselves in a position to excel at this role.
Yeah, I think for me, I grew up in a family. My father's a Marine, and he has 3 girls. And so we were always taught in the mindset of, you can achieve anything, you can do anything, you need to be independent, you need to be strong. And so I guess I was kind of naive when I first entered the business. And I always thought, you'd be asking me on day one when I became a journalist, I would have told you I wanted to be a news director. And that was my goal, and that's what I was going to get to. And so, were there obstacles in the way? Yes. And, being a news director definitely has its challenges. But I don't think it's any different for me than it would be for a man as far as the challenges go.
So it's interesting because for me it was a little bit of the opposite. I never thought I wanted to be an editor. My husband laughs because about a year before I became an editor, he was like, "You said you didn't want to be an editor." He kept saying that. And so mine was different, where all of a sudden the managing editor at the time, JBA, left about 6 months after bringing me back to the paper at that time to head the investigative unit. And I had hardly any experience managing. I mean, I was pretty much, I'd say, like kind of a mentor at that point. And so she was just gone, and they needed someone to step up and help, and I was just that person, I guess they thought of, to do that, and I just did it. So there really wasn't a lot of conversation, there wasn't a lot of thought, and so I think of that now differently. So I have more of those conversations with men and women in the newsroom, talking about what they want to do later, especially if they show some interest, because it just didn't happen that way for me. I loved the way that it happened. It was perfect. It worked out really well. But I think that there's ways that we can help people to get them to their positions as well.
So I didn't realize I wanted to be a news director. That was not my goal when I started. I remember the first time I walked into a newsroom at WUFT in Florida. Go Gators. Yeah. And I saw this woman at this table, and she just looked so important. She had all this stuff around her, and I walked in the newsroom, and I'm like, that's me. And I just took off, and I was a producer, and that's my background. And then I just started working my way up, becoming an executive producer, senior producer, assistant news director, and then a news director. And yet it wasn't something I planned, but I think it was just something as I was in the business longer and longer that I wanted to do, and I worked for a really good company and they kept promoting me. And that's pretty much my story.
I think similar to Mary Kelly, I also started as a reporter and didn't have my eyes set on any higher roles. And I think just working hard, I was the first woman in my family to go to college, and I've always just worked really hard at whatever I've been doing. So I was working as a reporter in Tallahassee, and the opportunity opened up to be the news director. I didn't think I could do it when I first started to have that conversation. I didn't think of myself that way. And I was lucky to have a mentor who is the previous news director, Karen Fagans at WJCT, who believed in me and gave me that opportunity.
So Mary Kelly, I know the Florida Times Union has its big commitment to the EVE Awards and a big supporter of Gen W, which is Generation Women. And I'm wondering if the TV stations have specific initiatives that help promote and develop women, and is it really your responsibility?
That's a good question.
We don't have any specific, like women-specific programs. In fact, I feel like recruitment in and of itself is kind of an issue for us right now. I know a lot of stations have backed off of the free internships we have to pay now, and a lot of people don't have budgets for that, and I feel like that's a disservice to a lot of college kids. I mean, if I didn't have an internship, I wouldn't be here today. So I think recruitment in and of itself, male or female, kind of needs to step up a little bit. And especially one thing about Jacksonville, you know, we play like it's a top 20 market. Everyone in this room knows that. But so to find the kind of talent who wants to come to Jacksonville, which I don't know why they wouldn't. We have a beach, we have NFL, the Gators are down the road. I mean, come on, right? So, but it's tough sometimes to open the door for the kids who are right for this job, because we do play so hard and we are so competitive and we really are like top 20. So it's sometimes hard to recruit to Jacksonville because they're either not quite there yet or they're off to Houston or somewhere like that.
I would say, we don't have any specific programs either, but one thing that I've noticed just in hiring and negotiating contracts and stuff with multiple people is that I read this study the other day. I totally believe this, that 80% of women don't counteroffer when you're negotiating a contract. And I would say in my experience, it's probably closer to 90. Wow. And so one thing I try to do is every female I have, and males too, you know, we're getting a lot of younger journalists in, because I try to talk to them about, you know, the art of negotiating. And literally every female I tell them, you know, 80% of females don't counteroffer, and it's really important that you counteroffer, because you just never know, and it shows strength in your own ability, and that you know what you're doing, you can fight for yourself. So you know, from a one-on-one perspective, I think that's, you know, that kind of mentorship is important.
We don't have a specific program at WJCT. I think we're kind of unique among this group with our staff being so tiny. I have 8 people under me, and it's funny, we have one man who's on the air and all of the other voices are female, and that reporter happens to be leaving us. And so in recruiting for his position, I've really been thinking I want to find a man because we'll be all female if we don't find a man. That's kind of ironic.
You know, that's important that you look for that gender diversity, because I mean, studies show that companies or businesses that have gender diversity are usually more successful and profitable. And so you probably all likely have policies around gender diversity, but it really comes down to a culture. And so what do you as managers and leaders do, like their hiring practices and promotion practices, and, you know, how do you make sure that that's based on objective criteria? And just in general, how you run the newsroom, because sometimes, you know, policies are so broad, but how do you create that culture?
Well, and I was going to say the gender diversity is big, but diversity in general. So also race diversity, and I don't think there's any newsroom or other companies today that do that well enough yet. And I think that we've just got so much to do to get ahead on that. But to answer your question about kind of how to run a newsroom and make sure that all those voices are heard, it's making sure that everybody understands that we want you to speak up, that we want you to be a part of that conversation. I think that's a big part of it. And then when it comes to hiring, it is truly about the best people and not looking at, for a newspaper, it's different. Like, I'm not looking at headshots. I guess you guys probably all get all that and videos and everything. So I don't look at any of that. I'm truly looking at the best quality journalism when I'm deciding who to hire.
I think hiring is really tricky. I think Jacksonville, for whatever reason, is not on a lot of people's radars in this business. I think when they think of Florida, they think of Tampa, Orlando, or Miami. So I have a hard time recruiting people. Obviously, you want to find the best people. You have people that you are going to bring in, you have plane tickets for them, and then they email you and say, oh, I'm out, I'm not coming. I mean, it's all different sort of scenarios that we run into. Diversity is always really important. We have fantastic internship programs at WJXT. And I was actually an intern out of college at WJXT, so I've kind of come full circle. And I was lucky enough when I was an intern to work with Tom, who always tells the story about being nice to the interns. You never know when they're going to be your boss. And of course, George was there as well. So it's a very competitive market and a hard market too, as Pascal was saying. And we can always do better. And it's always, it's a process. It's hard.
This might be kind of a tacky question, but I've had a lot of help in my career, and starting with my professor, Dan Kossoff at the University of North Florida, who helped me get the internship with Howard Kelly at Channel 12, who picked up the phone and called Channel 17. I'll co-anchor Glenn Fisher, and all big, I think, advocates of women. But so often I hear that women don't support each other. Have you found that to be, or can you admit to it? Like, what has your experience been in that regard?
In Cox Media Group, we're lucky that we have a woman president. We have a lot of women leadership in Cox, and I kind of feel the opposite. I feel like they may almost take sometimes some extra time to make sure, that they got you where they need us, or that we get what they're trying to say. So I've been a little lucky in that regard. But to be honest, I think a lot of times women may unfortunately feel a little threatened at first, and so you kind of have to just go out of your way and break those walls down, and go out of your way and shake hands, and go out of your way and smile. It goes a long way. And then those barriers come down. I think a lot of it comes from within. It's not so much like anything we've done that they're like, I don't know about if I should approach her or not. Sometimes it's just what we haven't done. Maybe we didn't smile. Maybe we didn't open our door. Maybe we didn't go out of our way to shaking hands. So personally, I try to do that a little bit more because I know that sometimes there's a stigma with that.
I think I've just always been pretty fortunate. I don't ever remember any sort of backstabbing, anybody not being kind and supportive. I will, however, say that the person who was the game changer for me, the career changer, was a man. I mean, that person who believed in me, and my boss today, Marcus Long, the president of Time Media, years ago, one of the reasons I came back to the paper, and from the very beginning, just went out of his way to see something in me that I didn't even think to see in myself. Again, nothing negative to say, but I think I am also more mindful about than how I am with other people, and it's not something.
So much, I think, of who we become and what we believe in ourselves kind of happens in childhood and in the way we were raised. And I was raised with 3 brothers, and we were all treated the same. And I always believed I could do anything. And so when you look at, and I think today maybe younger people rely on the media more for, how they see other women, like, stereotypes. Airline pilots are men and engineers are men. What shaped your belief in that you could rise to the top?
I never knew it was not an option. Recently I was asked for a memory from youth that kind of shapes who you are as a leader today. And I didn't have any time to think about it. And the first thing that popped out was my family moved to Mandarin when Mandarin was dirt roads. Like, I had a horse, it was in the middle of nowhere. And there wasn't like the neighborhood playground. There weren't a lot of kids. And so I would kind of go out into the woods on this day and like get to create all this fun stuff to do. And then as more kids started moving in that neighborhood, as it built up, they would like show up on my doorstep in the morning, like, what are we doing today? And so I think it's kind of creating that path and opening your own doors at the same time, creating your own adventures at the same time. I always said, if you're bored, you're boring. So you just got to get out there and get it done. And that was a memory that came to me, and I didn't realize it really had anything to do with my leadership skills today, but I think it does.
I think a lot of my leadership skills came from being an athlete, honestly. So I'm really competitive, and I played a little bit collegiately, not much, but a little, and played competitively my entire life. Lots of different sports, but you learn leadership, you learn how to lose, you learn how to win, and you learn how to work hard. And those are things that, we've always carried over. And, very similarly, the way success was not, there was no option there. You were going to succeed, period. You were going to go to college, and you're going to become something. Is sort of the way we kind of always grew up thinking. And so that's sort of, I think back about the younger me when I first started in the business. I started at WFAA, and that's Market 5, and it's a legacy station, and I was one of the youngest ones in the newsroom. And so I can remember lots of people would walk up to me and ask me something. They would say, how old are you? And I still get this all the time. I literally get this all the time.
I hate it when they ask me
It's like they want me to run through my whole resume, you know what I mean? And even now, I get it a lot. And I, at the time, I was so aggressive and so passionate, and I was that person that said, if anyone calls and say, call me, I'll be there. And I started at the bottom of the totem pole at WFAA, and just came to the meetings with ideas, and I was that, I was really passionate and aggressive. And I think back, if I had someone like me in my newsroom, I'd probably be like, hey, calm down, lady, calm down. You're going to be fine. But that's sort of how I approached everything in life. It's just with this like raw passion.
So I already said earlier, I really didn't think I'd be an editor, and for me, it was later, it was like in college, where my curiosity was encouraged by a college professor. And I remember thinking that, okay, it's okay to be asking these questions and not stopping when somebody says no. And if you followed my reporting, then for years here in Jacksonville, I don't stop when somebody says no, and I just keep that going. But what I know is, and what we all know, is that young girls will stop, right? So now there's this time when I have a daughter who's 12, she'll be 13 in a few months, and she's feisty, and she's opinionated, and she, is kind of fearless, and then you start seeing these little indicators that she's quieting down, and she's doubting herself a little bit more. And that's the age, right, when this happens to everyone. And so I am really outspoken about that to make sure that she knows that I don't want her to be afraid to say what she's thinking. I want to be respectful, and there's a time and place and all of that, but I don't want her to feel like she can't say what she's thinking. And she's been told by people around her who are in positions of authority at times that she's boisterous. And I say she is a dreamer, and she's a big dreamer, and you'll see her name someplace one day, if only I help to kind of keep her going. So I think of it more for the future than I think of for myself now.
What was the question? I think for me, I love my job. I love what I do. There's not one day in my career that I have walked through that door and not be happy to walk through the newsroom. I think that goes a long way. I'm very competitive as well. I'm aggressive, and I'm a person who reads the newspaper every day. And I actually grew up in a family where we got the Milwaukee Sentinel and the Milwaukee Journal every day, and we watched TV news at night. I was more interested in the weather at that time. So my mom just taught me you always need to be able to take care of yourself. So I really took that to heart. And my dad's advice was you need to pay off your credit card every month, and I've done that my entire life. So when my mom said that to me, I just have always kept going, and I've just never stopped. And again, I just feel blessed that I love what I do. And I tell everyone this is the best job that I've ever had, and I mean that. I love it, and I feel blessed.
Jessica?
I also feel very lucky to have ended up where I am. I was always interested in news as a child. I made up newspapers when I was 6 years old on my typewriter. But it's funny, I never thought of myself as aggressive or competitive. I'm like the exact opposite on the spectrum of that. So, but not to be too dark, but my father passed away when I was younger, and so I sort of grew up quickly because I had to help raise my sister. And so I think that experience, just putting me in that position of sort of having to take care of things from a young age, that's what I naturally kept doing as I got older. And so I think in the newsroom, I like to think of myself as very fair and compassionate and taking everybody's feelings and concerns into account all the time. And yeah, I'm very lucky to be where I am.
It's really nice to get to learn more about you as people, because it helps us understand like what shapes how you approach the news and coverage. So do you find that, and I know that there are studies where they look at what portion of newscasts in the media are stories about women, and when there's stories about women, is it more that they're going to jail, or are they really stories about accomplishments? So what do you think about that? Do you want to start with that, Jessica?
Sure. We actually did an analysis of our sources not too long ago to see what was percentage male, female, and different races. And to Mary Kelly's point, we have a long way to go in that arena as well. It's not just the diversity of the newsroom, but the diversity of sources that we really need to do better. So I think, yes, as you would guess, most of the sources were men. A lot of times you go find an expert, and the person that they give you to talk on whatever topic happens to be a man. So I think that's something that we're keeping in mind to maybe do a little bit more digging and find somebody who looks a little bit different to talk about the same topic, no matter what it is.
I agree, that's always top of mind for us too. I like to remind crews as they head out, let's make sure we get diversity. When I watch the morning show, if I tend to see the same people on set over and over, I feel we are not working hard enough. We need to do a better job on that, and we continue to try to do a better job on that for sure.
Yeah, I think, again, for gender, for race, for sexual identity, I think for everything we need to diversify better. And I think that we've come a long way. I mean, there was a time in Jacksonville, in the Times Union, when you wouldn't find many black people on the front page of the newspaper, even if they were trying to commit it. It's just the truth. And it wasn't that long ago in some cases. And so, but I think that for years it's been like this. So this is not just under me. So Frank Dunn, I think, was a true believer in diversity as well. And I think that he really pushed for that. We're constantly trying to think of how we do that. And I think we do it best when we are out talking to real people. Because you're right, I mean, some of those sources are the people that somebody suggests for us. So if we're going to a university, if we're going to a government agency, and the top people are white men, then that's largely what we're going to be hearing. And so I think getting out and finding some folks on our own, and again, even the diversity of the staff, which needs more work as well, in probably any of our organizations, but certainly in ours. I think that all helps.
But along those same lines, if you bring up a good point, do you think there's a gap between the people who are running media organizations and the actual consumers of your products?
You think somebody's going to touch that question?
Well, say more what you're thinking, Karen.
I said it so nice.
Tell me more what you're thinking when you're asking that. When you
So Howard, why did you react like that? I'll be interested in.
Well, I would say you're asking a group of managers
Yeah.
to pass judgment on the people that manage
Or
them.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know that's
Yeah.
going to get you the answer you're looking for,
Yeah.
but it's a good question. Very good.
All right, scratch that.
Well, that might be a different, and I don't know, and that's an interesting question. So the people who own us don't live in Jacksonville.
Right.
And my boss, while, you know, he's incredibly supportive of the journalism that we produce, he's got a lot on his plate, and he is not involved day in and day out at all in what we do.
And that's a better way to rephrase that.
I don't know if
May
that
I
helps.
ask a version of that question?
Yeah, thank you, Howard.
So when we're doing it, I guess what I'm saying is that is happening from often the field level, from the reporters who are out on the street, coming up with most of the story ideas,
So you have a lot
from
of
managers who are living in this community. Oh, without a doubt we do. I mean, we don't have people telling us what to write about from
No.
afar.
I know for us, I mean, we're always just trying to be reflective of our community, you know? So when it comes to, we recently also did an audit of our expert list, and I'm like, I'm sorry guys, we need more women out there. We have to be reflective of our community, and that's what we go out there with the intent to do every day. Now, does that mean sometimes that the witness looks a certain way? I mean, that is what it is, that's the witness. But we certainly strive to make sure that our newscasts are reflective of the community.
So one last question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So are there things that you see that women that work in the newsroom do that hurt them? Because I know when we started our careers, we were photographers and reporters, and we had to lug all that equipment. You know, I was always mindful not to complain that I was carrying this 50-pound whatever, and it's hot, it's heavy, so what are those things that you see that women can do better?
I have to tell you, I work with some incredibly talented, powerful women at the Florida Times Union. I think they do an amazing job. I don't think there's things that I would give them tips on what else to do. There might be questions on when they're negotiating, going to other jobs and so on, to make sure that they're speaking up. And so there might be some encouragement on occasion to be like, no, you're on the right track, keep going, go ahead and question. But they don't need much of that. They're pretty strong-willed and really talented. They don't.
I would just say, when I'm advising like another woman who's coming up in this, to know your own worth, and to know what your standards are, your ethical standards are, your personal standards are in a story, and to know your own worth in everything you do, and approach it from that way. Are there things I think about, when it comes to stereotypical women? Like I'm an emotional person, so when I'm mad, you'll see it, and when I'm sad, you'll see it. And every time I feel like I'm like, oh, I'll see an emotional story, and I'll feel like, gosh, tears come to my eyes. I think to myself, I can't let anyone see me cry, right? But that's kind of ridiculous as well. But because it is who I am. This is who I am, and so same with anyone. You can see a story that kind of touches you, and you have that same response. But I'm mindful of, especially when you get to upper management, that you're being watched, whether you're male or female, you're being watched. Like people are watching for how you react to things, or watching how you walk through the newsroom. So even like when I come in the morning, I'm like, good morning, even if, all morning I've been dealing with some kind of, HR problem or something like that.
Happens.
Yeah, right. So I'm like, good morning, how, because I know, like, I set the tone and that I'm being watched. But I think that's for any manager. But yeah, there's definitely some things, I would just say, be you. Know your own worth.
And I think, purpose is really important for anyone in this field. It's very, very, very hard what we do. it's long days. It's, you're going to spend all day working on something else blows up, you're going to have to move and may never get back to that again. And you really had a passion for that first story. But our purpose at the end of the day is to serve the community and to make sure that we are there for our community when it matters. And whether male, female, whatever in the newsroom, if they have passion and they have purpose and they really understand that vision, they can go anywhere.
So is there a question that you wish that somebody would ask you?
Why is everything breaking news? Everything is breaking news. And it really,
And
breaking
why,
news
Drake the
like
Young and
this,
the Restless, do they break in?
fascinating. I mean, a very important story, and I don't understand why everything is breaking. It wasn't that way when we were doing it. If it was breaking news, it was a really big, important story.
I think every station has a different definition for what qualifies as breaking, developing, that kind of thing. And we all know from research, we all get the same kind of research that, you're, especially, so take the 11 p.m. news right now. You're fighting sleep. You're fighting, we are fighting for every viewer we get. And probably the same for the 10 o'clock news in some of these markets. So it's, we need to hold that person for 5 minutes. And it's so a lot of stations will kind of turn to that if it's breaking and it's fast paced, hopefully we can keep the people from turning off and going to sleep. So like in NBC and ABC programming, the program ends and then you have more than a minute in some cases of credits and another commercial. And well, gosh, a minute is an eternity to keep a viewer to watch the top of the newscast. The industry is changing. It's always changed. It's just always constantly evolving. But what's happening right now with the television industry is that viewers are changing their habits. So they're getting their news on their phone, and they're getting their news from different places. And so for people to watch the television side of things, like we have to keep people engaged. And sometimes that means breaking news. I feel like we have a high bar for what's considered breaking news because it is the boy that cried wolf. In many cases, if you do it too often, then it loses its appeal. But I think that's why a lot of stations do that, is because it's like, hey, be alert, pay attention, try to attention grabbing,
As a former news anchor and a sports anchor for 25 years, at my age now, I get to the point where I'm starting to tune it off because it's slamming it one minute after minute after minute. And I don't know whether maybe your research is telling you that we're really geared to a younger audience as opposed to the older audience. It's maybe like you're kind of dialing away from us.
I think every station has to kind of decide that for themselves. Like what is their standard of breaking news? If it broke this morning, are you still going to use that animation at 6 p.m.? That kind of thing. And I really think all three television stations do it differently in this market.
And the art too is consistency. You can't go all in on something one day and then the next day it's just a 15-second story. So you really want to make sure that you are consistent, whether you're branding it breaking or not. But research still shows, and I'll be honest, breaking news wins. So, a lot of times that will be the go-to. But also in our market, when you have younger producers and they might not fully, just because the house might still be a little smoky, is that breaking news? No one was hurt, no one was pulled from it. But, if they're in the show and they're like, oh, breaking news, camera just rolled up 5 minutes ago, let's go. So, there's some teaching opportunities with that as well.
I swore I would not ask a question that made me sound like an old man.
I've already done that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. My question has nothing to do with gender. It's about time and management. You ladies represent senior management in companies. You're not just a department head. You're an extremely important department head. And I've been in that seat, your seat. I've also been a general manager. But the one thing that I do notice now that I'm in my senior years is a very interesting change between news directors and general managers. And so I'm going to pose this question to you. In our day, Lynn's day, my day, Tom Wills's, well, even before Tom Wills, but my point being is that general managers were known in this community. They were active in this community. They were in Rotary clubs. They were in the chamber. They were involved. We saw them on the street. They weren't just out making calls on best sales prospects. News directors were also extremely involved in this community. You are the ladies, you are the managers that make the big decisions as to what's relevant in a community. How confident are you operating out of your office that you are really in touch with the community to make the calls that you make?
Okay, good question.
For me, I try to know where my voids are. I try to be pretty self-aware on the things I know and what I don't know. And I try to surround myself with the people who can help fill in those gaps. I'm not going to know everything. I'm not going to be able to be everywhere. Will I be at a Make-A-Wish thing one day? Sure. Will I be at a beach cleanup one day? Sure. I try to be that voice and the person in the community that people can look up to just like they would look up to in a newsroom. But I'm not going to know everything, and I'm smart enough to know that. And so I do try to surround myself with the people who are smarter than me in a lot of ways. And that's how I try to fill in those gaps.
I feel the same way. I'm very self-aware about that. I don't know everything. I think that's why beat system with reporters is really important, and people on your staff who have time and perspective in the community helps us. And I've also tried to spend some time in the field. I'll go out with reporters just so I can go to areas that I might not normally go to. And I have found that has been really beneficial for me and helped me better understand the community.
Karen, can I ask a question?
Of course, Donald.
Have you all seen the movie The Post? You've all seen it? No?
Yes.
It's a demonstration of how far our business has come.
So true.
And the fact that Katharine Graham was a Martin Luther King of her era.
So true.
There's a scene in the movie where she walks out of the Supreme Court building. There are all these young women on the steps looking at her, and they are in awe. And here, let's put it this way, Mrs. Graham would be very proud of this panel. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to respond to the last question. It's funny because last night, actually, I was holding what we're calling our Beyond the Core listening session across our region. So we were holding one at the beaches last night. And the idea there is that we go out and we get to know different communities that we wouldn't normally cover as much as we'd like to or interact with. So we've been at NAS Jacksonville. We went to Newtown, just west of downtown. We went to Arlington, and we were at the beaches last night. So it's a chance to get out and actually just listen. It's not to do any stories there that day, but just to hear from people what the issues are that are important in their communities, and then follow up with stories later. So that's been my idea of how to do better and reach out and listen to people.
There's a lot of outstanding journalism that's being produced here. The thing I wonder about is this. There's been a decline over time as far as the number of people watching, reading, and listening. I wonder why that is, with, the great journalism that's being done. And then also I wonder, look, if you had a situation where say 20 to 30% of your viewers, readers, listeners, all of a sudden stop watching and reading and listening, and we're just going to your websites to get information, would that affect what you're able to do and how you're able to run your newsrooms?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're seeing the shift now. I hear a lot of newsrooms talk about we're going to be digital first. I've yet to truly see a newsroom that's digital first. So when is the last time a reporter went out and said, I'm going to turn this story online before I turn it for television? It happens for you a lot. But in television newsrooms, it doesn't happen that often. It's sort of why? Because the TV deadline is now. But the viewers have changed how they do things. So I've been experimenting a little bit. So take this May Sweeps period right now. We're running these packages at 6 p.m. called Unsolved. It's a cold case series where we're looking into the summer of '74, 5 children missing, and is it the work of a serial killer? Okay. So the goal was to post all of the stories online last Thursday, and they started airing on Monday. And so we did that as an experiment. I wanted to see, did it boost viewership because the viewing experience is different on television than it is online. Did it garner more interest? And so we've been doing that on a lot of things, but we're already seeing that shift. TV is still really important in where the bulk of the revenue comes from and where the bulk of the viewers are right now. But in reality, your story has a much longer life online. And if you ignore that and you aren't making that shift, you're going to be left behind. I think in a matter of 5 years, you will see it will be completely different.
So the same thing for newspapers, and this is not just here in Jacksonville, but across the country, you're seeing readers go more to online, and so not as many people are getting print. And by the way, I also think that often the reader believes that they're getting the story in the headline, and that quick thing that they see on Facebook or Twitter, and they're not seeing much more, they're not going in and they're getting the depth. So we're already experiencing that. It has affected the size of the newsroom. I mean, we don't have as many people here in Jacksonville at the Florida Times Union as we did even earlier this year, and decisively less than we did a year ago. And so we definitely have to be thinking online, but subscribers are still a really big part of what's paying our bills. And so we look at it as two different audiences in some ways. And so we're having the conversation with people online. So some of the bigger things that we've done, the river project, which we had a couple weeks ago about dredging and its effects on the St. Johns River, Walking While Black, something that we did with Republica at the end of last year and continue working on. Both of those stories were online days before we put them in print. And, so that has definitely worked for us in some ways, but really because we feel like you guys were already, you're having the conversation along the way. We knew that people would think that they had heard it all by the time they picked up the paper the next day and read whatever David Bauerlein had, or Steve Patterson, or Dave Monroe, or any of these folks. And the truth is, as you know, simply because we have some of the time and resources, the depth that we're going to provide you in that print story is going to be, just far more than anybody can do within a few minutes or a few hours of getting that information. And so we just want to we're kind of trying to bring them along and let them see what we're doing as we do it. It's definitely affecting, though, how we do things. We're just giving up a lot of those smaller things so that we can continue bringing you guys those big stories that no one else has the time to do.
And for those of you in TV, you know what this means, and this
We
have to wrap it up, but I tell you, we are in great hands, and this has been just a wonderful, wonderful panel. I'd love to invite you to stay after and to come back. We meet quarterly, noon Wednesday right here, so I'd love to see you come back. So if you'll join me.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, ladies, for doing what I consider the best program we've had over the time that I've been involved in this organization. So thanks again. A reminder that this is a membership-driven organization. $20 a year is not a bad deal. Coming up in June, we will be starting to look at our Facebook group. We post a lot of the luncheon pictures and a lot of historical pictures and videos and such, and we'll start taking out non-members starting June 1st. So if you want to continue to see what's happening with this organization, you want to become a member and see one of the people back at the bar in order to pay your $20 a year dues, and that would be everybody's pointing to Beth. So it's we did come up with another page, Jacksonville Broadcasting Memories, and that will continue to be open to everyone, and a lot of things will be posted there as well. The next meeting again is August 15th. We'll let you know about the topic as soon as we get everything lined up. And Tommy, where is the bag? I know that's why you're all lingering. Yes.
A couple questions before that happens. Does anybody still use 16 millimeter film? I have, and don't ask me where it came from. I don't order anybody, any of you guys. I cleaned out my garage the other night and I found a viewer for 16 millimeter film. I also found a lot of film that had been up in the garage for years. It was all cracked. It was some of Walt Dunbar's old film from Channel 12. And it probably would have been great. And it was just pieces of stuff. We went through it years ago and it hadn't been spliced. But anyway, I had this viewer in my car, and usually Bill's here, and I would have asked him if he wanted it. But if anybody needs it or can use it,
we're working on some stuff with the Historical Society, so they'll be happy for it.
can I give it to you afterwards?
Yeah.
All right, it's in my car. I'll give it to you. And one other final question: does anybody here use MailChimp?
Yeah.
You do. A lot, is that it? Well, then I'll talk to you after. Thank you.
All right, Karen. He does. Would you mind sticking your hand in that?
I wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind if.
Maybe if I was rich, it's all right.
Been on a run. It's rigged, but come on, Mississippi.
It's rigged, but it's.
So check your number. I'll do the last 3 digits. 942.
Hey, Mikey!
$26 is yours, Mike.
Next time, I'll send money.
Again, August 15th, our next luncheon meeting. Thanks for coming. Please remember, pay for your lunch. And it's a little bit wicked out there weather-wise. We've been watching the storms coming in. Not so much here, but where I live, definitely. And travel safely. Again, great program.
Good to see you. How are you?
Yeah.